Hello, welcome back to
WhaTheFlok.
What the Flok's happening here? We'll get you up to speed. This is part 2, with whom I have renamed the everythinger of the wonderful documentary Holy Hell. And Will, I was going to ask you, can people watch that online? And if so, where's the best place for them to watch that?
It has moved from Netflix to Amazon.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, on Amazon.
Yeah, so you can watch it on Amazon, but you have to rent it. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
But
it's worth it.
But you can watch
worth
it with commercials, which I highly recommend you don't do on IMDb.com. But
IMDb.
yeah,
Okay.
commercials, I mean.
So
help the cause.
Yes.
Go to Amazon.
Holy Hell, Amazon, highly recommended. It changed my life.
And Will directed it, edited it, produced it,
created it, lived it,
You can't say created.
breathed it.
When I was a kid, I would make I would do my titles. When I was a kid, I'd make movies, and I would use noodles.
Right.
Noodles?
Vegetable words.
Oh, that you would like glue to the paper?
I would just put it there, and I'd film it.
Oh, cool.
And I would direct, edit, write, and film.
Right,
and
of course.
do all stunts by.
That was my Will Allen.
So when I was doing the
original stunts.
Yeah, when I was doing the credits for this film, and I had a great editor work with me. He was I have to mention Sean, because he was my junior editor who became my co-editor.
Okay.
And we worked this whole thing out together. I hired him when he told me he was a graduate from USC, and he told me his mother was a psychologist and his father was a psychiatrist. I'm like, you're hired. I'm like, yes, I need someone smart to work with me. So, and have my back as we tell this big story, not just my story. My story is kind of small. It's more everyone's story, this whole thing.
Right.
So, we were talking about.
Well, I mean, I just want to say everyone should watch Holy Hell. I should probably look there now. Yeah. And, but also consider this to be like the DVD extra, because we're hearing stuff that's not in the movie.
Not in the movie.
Behind,
I feel very honored by that.
It's very difficult.
The behind the scenes real thing,
Yeah.
If you think about it, like even anyone's life, it's to get 20 years into 90 minutes is like you just have to cut.
Yeah,
it's near
so
impossible.
Much, and it's near impossible.
But you did it.
Well, we laid the groundwork so you can have a conversation.
Well, and actually at that time, the docuseries really wasn't a thing yet.
It wasn't a docuseries.
So you could have made it into a docuseries and probably covered a lot more.
Right.
Yeah.
But
and we're writing a television, more of a dramatic series, which is much
fantastic.
more
based off of your experience.
Yeah.
During the early years.
Is that what you're working on right now?
It is it's not exactly what I'm working on. I've been working on it with another executive producer for about 3 years, but he's doing most of the work right now.
Fantastic.
And putting it all together and creating it. So.
All right. Well, let's get back to your story.
I gotta read our quote of the day.
Oh, right. I'm sorry.
Because I got a good one.
Jumping the gun.
Jeez, Hoyt. Gotta jump in here. Okay, so our quote of the day. Yeah. It's a short one, but a good one. Rarely, if ever, are any of us healed in isolation. Healing is in itself an act of communion. And that's by Bell Hooks. I mean, come on. That's powerful, right?
That's interesting.
I found that yesterday, and I was like, oh, come to mama. Like, that's a good one.
And I think it's great because it very much encapsulates the cult survivor community, where it just helps so much to know that even though you've had, like everyone talks about their own experience, there's just so many through lines and themes that emerge. You're like, it's like all these cult leaders read the cult leaders handbook and we all got exposed to the same shit. I mean, it's pretty amazing.
It is interesting.
Same shit.
It's great
Keeps going.
Different smell.
Different smell.
Different smell.
Yeah. So we're back to the cliffhanger in our last episode. And if you didn't see it, I recommend you.
You have to watch part one of Will Allen, and
Otherwise
it'll tee you up. Well, they'll understand, but we're kind of jumping in the middle of, the climax of the story
to
here.
set the scene, Will's kind of towards the end of his 22-year journey in this group. And we're getting close to the point where the exit's going to happen. So that's kind of what we're building up to, what the events that lead to you actually extricating yourself. So take it away, Will.
That was hard. I wasn't a very confrontative personality. Like I always, even in the group, I wouldn't necessarily proclaim anything. I would just act. Just like my actions should speak for my words. I'm not going to be a wordy person. I'm going to show my love.
Not going to preach.
Yeah, I'm going to show my love. I'm not going to false proclaim anything. I'm just going to be who I am. So when I left, it was with no words. It was like, these are my actions. I'm leaving. Okay, because I really couldn't even say anything to them. But that came a little later. So where we had left it was the group had terribly broke apart and become
After a letter.
Division.
It'd been fractioned, yeah.
Yes.
Fractured, yeah. And 50 people were absolutely on the rampage, wanting to sue him and go after him. And 50 people were like defending him, kind of going, well, we don't want to quit what we've been doing. No one was ready to really quit everyone that fast.
Right.
You know, it was like, well, we can solve this.
I can't quit you.
Yeah, we can figure this out. You know, how can we spin this? You know, I mean, that's what he's thinking. So I watched him for the next 2 weeks, spinning, like lying. We were like, I was so disgusted. So, but we got down to Corpus Christi, and I was just like, I can't do this. For the first time, I was having nightmares
Really?
of stabbing my friends. I mean, we were like, it was so primal. The whole thing was so terribly
That's a good word.
confusing and primal. And like, because the rug was being ripped off, and everything you thought was true was
for 2 decades of
for
your
2 decades.
life.
And you know, even the things on the outside that were debatable, that wasn't the problem. It was the deeper truths and the lies and the deception. The amount of deception and manipulation that was going on was unbelievable. And it had gotten so out of control because his narcissism had flourished in that 20 years. It wasn't really apparent. The more he became, I would say, the more he became afraid of being caught.
Yeah.
He became more
Bubbled to the
secretive,
surface.
and he went underground, and we all had to play this game, and we all became very, very underground, kind of. Everything. No one could talk. No one. There was one point he thought the FBI had the phones bugged, and we couldn't. This is such a great story. I'm sorry. We couldn't use the phone. When we used the phones, we couldn't say his name, of course. Then he changed his name to a woman, so that if we were talking about him in Austin, it would be, she. She. So I'd pick up the phone to call my best friend to say, like,
because the FBI would never figure that out.
No, not at all. And I pick up but this as a disciple, you had to kind of follow these new rules.
Of course.
So it was all an exercise, like, can I remember this new name? He was calling
what was it?
Dorothy.
No.
Yeah, he was Dorothy.
From the Wizard of Oz?
Whatever. And so I would call my friend and be like, hey, Tracy, Dorothy wants her salmon like around 5:30 when she gets back from the gym. But she doesn't want any asparagus. I'd be like,
right.
Like, oh my God. And we would just do this for like 2 years, where we would only use a she and stuff like that. So his paranoia, and he thought it was all funny, but it wasn't funny.
No.
It wasn't funny.
It's traumatic.
It was traumatizing. I'm like, this is not what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
I never came here to do this, whatever we're doing now. So when the group broke up and he went down to Corpus, he doesn't like winter, and we don't like winter either in Corpus Christi. It's not very pretty.
Right.
And so we were like, you got to go to someplace sunny. We're going to take you. Let's go to Hawaii. He always wanted to live in Hawaii, and I'm thinking to myself, I had my partner, my boyfriend there at the time, and that was one thing that was smart that they did, because they grabbed me to go with them, and this had happened like to me in 1992, when he left LA, he grabbed me in the middle of the night and he said, we're leaving. And that's why when it happened again 14 years later, I said to Tracy, I can't do this again. I can't rip my whole life up and leave on a whim following this man who has created all this shit for himself.
Right.
It's not my story. This has nothing to do with me.
Right.
I'm like, I'm out.
Problem.
I'm out. Yeah, I'm out.
Yeah.
And so, but I couldn't get out that quickly. I was very loyal and long-suffering. Those are good qualities.
Right.
And so, but I did jump on the plane to Hawaii. I remember saying, like, we're taking you to Hawaii. I'm going to go. I'm going to find a place. We're getting flights. I'm going.
So you were going to get him settled in.
Yeah, we're getting him out, getting to Hawaii, and he can stop doing what he's doing and get off the grid and go live, and everyone can just go quietly, and he can stop.
Right.
Wishful thinking.
It was really hard for him to like let me leave and go on the plane, because I'm always like nearby.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I'm going. I need to do it.
Yeah.
So I remember landing in Hawaii, and I got off that plane. It was the first time I'd been on, away from him for 14 years.
Really?
Yeah. I'd go see my parents once a year for like 3 days. And that was the only time I'd ever be allowed to go away. So I was landed in Hawaii, and the air was blowing on the, have you ever been there? It's like the airport's just like, right away you walk in, you're like, oh. And I'm like,
Paradise.
I am never leaving. And I go, I hope he never comes. I hope he never comes. And my partner was still there. They kept saying, like, he was supposed to fly in a couple of days later, and they kept saying, like, he goes, he's not going to get on the plane. He doesn't want to get on the plane. I'm like, fine, because I'm not coming back.
Yeah.
You know, it's fine if he doesn't come. But he did. He finally got on the plane, comes over, and we were all kind of like making shift, living in a house together, trying to make sense of everything. And my boyfriend at the time And I decided to move out. And that was when I decided, that was when my moment was, because I loved him way more than what was happening. And I was already over everything.
Yeah.
It was really an opportunity for me finally to quit, because the whole group was breaking apart.
Mm-hmm.
And so I no longer had a job. Like, I no longer had a purpose. My purpose was to make sure the group stayed together, and that we were all, everyone was helping each other, and we're all the needs are being met. You know, that was like my job, and helping everyone. And then when everyone's like gone, I'm like, I'm not gonna.
No job.
He used to say to me years before, he's like, Francesco, what if no one was here? It was just me and you. Would you still tie my shoelaces and take care of me? And I remember thinking to myself, like, fuck no. Oh my God, please don't make that happen. I was like, no, I need to have all my friends here. We're all doing this. Don't make me. I'm not here alone with you. You know, I was like really clear about that.
Wait, why did he call you Francesco?
That was my name. He changed my name. He changed all of our names.
Did not know that.
It's in the film. But it's a quickly. But he changed my name. He changed my sister's name, and both my sister's names he changed.
Okay.
Yeah, and my mother wouldn't accept it. She was like, "I'm not gonna." But yeah, he changed my name to Francesco. It's from St. Francis, from a movie, Brother, Sun,
St.
Sister
Francis,
Moon.
the Brother, Sun, Sister Moon.
Yeah, it was a lovely movie.
We watched it in my cult too.
Did you?
Oh yeah.
Oh, he'd pause it and explain what was going on.
Standard cult procedure. Yeah.
Wow.
He goes, "This is him going through enlightenment. This is him.
Yeah.
This is him being persecuted."
Sure.
I'm gonna have to rewatch the film again, because I haven't watched it
It's
since
okay.
it came out.
It's okay.
No,
It goes so fast. The film goes very quickly.
I missed stuff, but now that I've talked to you, I'm excited to go back and
a lot of
watch
people see it again. And they go like, I saw there's so much I missed, because it is cramming a lot in kind of quickly. It just goes.
Well, I was crying through most of it. I was like having a breakdown.
Yeah.
So
Yes. So he would call me Francesco.
Okay.
That was my name for 20 years. And that was kind of hard to unravel too. When I got out, my sister, a lot of people kept their name. But part of my healing, since we're going to get into that, was changing my name back to my name.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It was never legally
reclaiming the former will. Yeah.
And I remember when I left, he's like, "You're not going to change your name, are you?" He goes, "Because it has such a good energy, that name." Because of course he gave it to me.
Right.
And I looked at him, I'm like, "No."
Yeah.
Yes. How do I don't even talk to you anymore.
yeah.
I'm not going to answer that. But I did change it. It was really hard to change my name once I got out of that, and I was back in California now, and I remember I wanted to get back into film, and I was going back, and I was Will Allen before this. You know, I was Will Allen up into college. I was very identified with my name.
Yeah.
I remember liking my name at the time.
Right. Yeah.
And I remember like kind of even as a kid, I'd be like, you know, Will Allen production. I was really like identified with my name.
Sure.
So, but I couldn't relate to it anymore. I remember being on the beach going, I don't even know who that is.
Who am I?
It was really a who am I moment.
Yeah.
I go, how can I go back to Will? That is just like, I'm Francesco. And then I asked the universe, I go, who am I? Like, am I Francesco, this spiritual person? Or am I Will?
Yeah.
You know, this editor, you know, or whatever. Yeah. And it was like, you've always been Will.
Right.
You just took on Francesco. You just borrowed this name. You went in this journey. You always will. Yeah.
So within that exit strategy, and now you're back in LA and you're contemplating going back to filmmaking and that sort of thing, what was the process where you started to identify the group for what it was and use words? I don't know if you used the word cult or cultic, group. Or
we didn't use that word yet.
Yeah.
Because that was just such an easy word, and it was just kind of it's like using God or something.
Yeah,
well, it's a little bit like that. We knew better. Like it was more complicated than that, so we didn't use that word.
Right.
But it was like our life. we call it life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I remember we all had different experiences afterwards, and everyone tried to work it out and talk about it amongst themselves. If you had a group of friends
so amongst
themselves.
Each other, so you did not communicate with each other, just everyone kind of worked it out on their own?
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, like I moved to Texas. I was in Hawaii, or I moved to California. A lot of people were still in Austin.
Right.
And so they'd all have dinner, and they'd all like talk about it. And they just keep working, like figuring it out. What happened?
Right.
Well, I remember this. At one point, Tracy, who was my co-producer, my best friend, she was always talking about what all this foul stuff that's going on. She's just trying to shake everyone out of like, no, stop romanticizing this.
Right.
Because one girl was like, we're always talking about the bad stuff, but so many good things happened.
Right.
And my friend goes, yes, and all we ever talked about was the good things. And now we're talking about the bad things.
Great.
Right.
So let's just get our heads around it because stop defaulting
Fantastic.
back to that other, but, because that's where it gets confusing.
Right.
Yes.
Totally.
Yeah.
In any relationship, it gets confusing. But I know he loved me. Or I know she loved me.
He didn't mean to beat me.
Yeah, he didn't mean to hit me.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
how's that working?
That's the work, though. That is the work. I mean,
Unraveling
I
it.
think, because I think, and I think, not unlike that Friends kind of, getting the point at is you don't want it to all be the bad and throw the baby out with the bathwater. Because I think, so much of the recovery process is identifying the bad and then going back and saying, well, there were some good things, which is how you forgive yourself for getting involved, right? But that's an interesting journey. So I'm kind of curious how to play it out for you did you go down that route of kind of going down, thinking about all the bad things first, and then kind of how did you kind of?
It was really hard for me to talk about the bad things.
Right.
One of my friends who was in this situation was, raped by him.
Right.
Because he was in this paradigm. He said it so well. He's like, it didn't register as abuse at the time. It didn't register as rape.
That's a good word to use. It didn't register.
It didn't register. It wasn't framed that way.
Yeah.
But our emotional body, our psyche, everything else knows what it is, right? Your boundaries are ruptured.
Yeah.
Things are discords happening. There's an imbalance happening, and you're being gaslit. As well.
Totally.
Such a great point.
Yeah, and so it's hard. But yes.
I mean, it happens a lot with children who are sexually abused. They generally can't talk about it until their 30s or 40s or sometimes later.
Sure.
It's very confusing.
Because it's very confusing, and as you're saying,
you block it out
for your
lot.
emotional process and to
Yes.
get to the point where you can start to identify and accurately describe what happened is really, really challenging.
It
so
is.
I think that's that's to me kind of an interesting part of and I'd love to hear your journey in this, because I think there's always the intellectual component that can connect the dots and say, okay, this happened, that happened, this is why I needed to leave, and yada, yada, yada. But that emotional processing of all those great feelings and all the best intentions that all got curled up and commingled with all this bad stuff, trying to make sense of it is really, really challenging.
It is hard.
Yeah.
Especially when you're kind of programmed to honor, respect, love, and adore this man.
Right.
Like you're supposed to.
Right.
He's your teacher.
Yeah.
From the very beginning, you had that feeling for him. And that all changed, but you're supposed to always have that feeling the whole way through, even though you're...
Sure.
Yes. So I think I hear you saying, your question is kind of,
Like,
what was the process of coming?
Yeah, coming out of this and coming to take ownership of what your experience was and how, taking responsibility for your half as well as identifying really what happened. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it was a long process.
Yeah.
It took a while. So my first reaction out of the group was like the pendulum.
Yeah.
I mean, I was literally kind of in a castle living with him. A lot of my friends had like the Saturn ring.
Yeah, right.
A lot of them had lives and jobs, and I was not really in that. I was like really isolated and really lived in one room for like 14 years.
Right.
On a futon that was about this long and my feet stuck off, which I never had a problem with.
Yeah. No,
I still actually kind of like it, my heels not being. But so I think that he... okay, I did forget what we're talking about.
So just
unwinding the good, the bad, and the ugly, and identifying what was what.
Well, for me, like getting my name back was one thing, and that was really hard. And I'll give you an example of that, how hard it was to relate to it. But that was one thing, coming back into myself. But sorting through like what had happened to me, like in talking about it. There was 5 years there. So he'd always told us that when you get out of something like this, you're going to go back to where your personality was when you started. You're going to swing
He told you that.
Yeah. He'd say, if you leave, you're just going to go right back to where you were. And I kind of did, because that is where my emotional body had been left.
Yeah, exactly.
So
right.
for my mature...
Could you get stunted?
There was things that hadn't grown from that point on.
Totally.
Right.
Relationships, anything that would naturally have happened from that point on was thwarted. So yeah, of course my personality went back to being 22. I just got out of college. So I'm about 32 now.
Yeah, exactly.
Hello.
There you go. Yeah.
Nice to meet you. And so...
I'm about 40. So
good. Well, that's great. We're younger than most people.
Right? Exactly.
Totally. And so... So yeah, I mean, I, traveled the world, I did drugs, I did whatever I wanted to do. I danced, I had consensual sex, as I say.
Yeah.
I got to explore that. And that's where you heal. You start healing when you start doing different things and creating new memories, I believe. That's what I thought at the time. That's what I was trying to do. So my first phase was like, just do what pleases you. Because after I got out of the group, two things happened. One, I remember I never want to lie again. There's nothing I need to hide ever again.
And do you feel it's because you were lying so much for him?
Yeah, because we were all lying. The whole group was lying. He made us lie.
Yeah.
And so when I had a partner at the time who was lying to me, I'm like, you don't have to lie to me. Like, we can handle whatever. Just talk about it,
Yeah.
I don't want to live a lie anymore. I don't want to live for that. Yeah.
That's great.
So, but I remember getting out of the group going, wow, I can do anything I want to do. And I had no desires, because that was one of the things we kept letting go of our desires. And so when you let go of your desires, you let go of them.
Well, and you remember you cauterized them.
You cauterized them, yeah. And I didn't know what they were. So I thought, well, I had to go try things and see what I like. And so it took me 5 years to try things, and things I hadn't done and things I had done, and decided what I like and what I want and who I am. I started living more ethically, opposite of what he was. And but I didn't get to the bottom of what happened to me. I couldn't get to the root of it.
That takes time.
Because I couldn't explain it to anybody.
Right.
Yeah, there was just no one I could explain it to. It was so complicated.
So where did those communication skills ultimately come from?
The communication skills to get out of it?
Well, no, to talk, like the way you're talking about
that
it
you
now.
have today.
We always had communication skills.
Right.
I mean, we were in this group, we all communicated quite a bit, and we had acting, we all learned how to talk, I mean, I don't say we all did, but I've always been able to talk or communicate what I'm feeling. But I don't think I ever could accept that. The hardest things to understand was that he did this on purpose, or that it was all preconceived, or that he was manipulating you the whole time. I just couldn't. I couldn't believe it.
Right.
It was almost like it wasn't easy for me to understand how he could do that,
or why.
Why would he lie?
Why
I mean,
would
why?
he do
This whole
that?
thing was based on this whole other thing. Why would he do that? Why would he even need to do that? So that was always hard for me to I would just ignore it and be like, it's too complicated. And a lot of us would just say, well, you had to be there. You just had to be there.
You had to be there.
Because, it's just almost you can't. So when I started making the movie is when I decided, no, what happened was I found out that he was still in Hawaii.
Still
doing it. He had 100 people with him again. And that flipped my minnow.
Right.
Because we left him there, made him promise not to stop this.
Wow.
And we thought he would, really.
How many people did you leave him there with?
Well, so in the movie, I kind of did explain this human condition where people don't care.
Yeah.
And they still went with him. Some people, and their logic was, well, this didn't happen to me, and I don't know if I believe that person, but really, you not believe all these people?
Yeah.
I mean, I know not one person's hard to believe, but we're talking 20 people.
Yeah.
But they didn't care because they didn't want to interfere with their relationship with him, because they had their own relationship, and it was like, we don't care.
Right.
Sure.
So they reconstituted the group
in Hawaii,
because you go to yoga.
Right.
Oh, you're so amazing. Oh, you should come over and eventually meet my teacher.
And wait, was it still called Buddha Field?
No, I don't know.
It wasn't
he changed his name. He
it.
changed everything, so no one can find him.
No one knows. Okay.
So on your own personal journey, did you start looking into things like influence techniques or manipulation to try to identify what had happened?
I studied. I took a couple courses on suppressive personalities.
Right.
And social personalities.
Right.
Most of us are social personalities. Wanting the best for everyone and to succeed. 80% of society, and there's 20% of these sociopathic, narcissistic type people who want to suppress. And so I learned about that, and I was like, that was a learning. I mean, I thought narcissism was like, vanity. Oh, the mirror. I didn't know it was missing a gene.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
But so that was a learning thing. And I also, I did some studying. But mainly the whole bathwater and the baby thing. Yeah. That was the hardest, because it was really, I felt like my work was my work. I saw a psychologist at one point, and I thought, well, she's not going to be able to help me. She's never going to get this. She wasn't spiritual. She thought even having a guru was absurd. So I'm like, okay, well, this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
Because this is a whole different world that I got into. But she was great. And so I think I started to throw the baby out. I didn't meditate.
Right.
I did, I partied. I did everything I wanted to do. I was kind of went the other direction, and I felt very comfortable with that. I felt very familiar, and I'm okay with this. I don't have. I've done my meditation. I know what that is. I've done it, and I feel like it hasn't gone anywhere. But I don't need to be a good boy and keep going down that path. I need to find a different path. And also, this is the hardest thing I think people might understand is, and I heard this. I was doing an interview with a woman who was social scientist, I think, a psychologist.
Okay.
And she was saying it's really sad or really hard when the place that we get damaged is the place that we need to go to heal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and like my inner sanctuary, wherever it is in this body, this inner safety has his fingerprints everywhere. It's like his voice, and he's so intertwined. He was so intertwined in that experience that I used to have in meditating. I wouldn't meditate because I don't want to go back into that. I don't want to go anywhere near that.
Well, it would be triggering.
It was very triggering,
right? Exactly.
Because I'd be sitting there right with his presence.
Did you have any issue with like loaded language? Like language from the group that you have to kind of catch yourself and say stuff. Yeah, because I mean it's this detangling.
Yeah. So I listened to lots of different things,
and it's also, I found for me, it was trying to identify the information or experiences I encountered that actually were valid to me. So that's where it's not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Really embracing the shades of gray and saying, okay, within this 20-year experience that I had, I learned a lot. And that's where. So I'm kind of curious.
Absolutely. Well, that was always there. That was always we were going to take away what we learned.
Yeah.
That we weren't, and I was never going to apologize for that, and I was never going to regret. Was one question I decided really not to ask all my friends. Like, well, do you regret? Do you regret coming to the Buddha field?
It's a rough word.
It's a rough word. I'm like, well, can we change that question somehow?
Yeah.
Right.
Because if you have children...
Well, it's like you change it to, what did you learn from this experience, right?
That's right. That's right. But a lot of people want to ask, do you regret?
Do you regret the time?
Well, no, I have. And that's, it's like a marriage.
And that, to me, that's the low-hanging fruit,
that
right? It's like you've identified you suffered on some level, and people want to I want to hear how you suffered.
So learning was the thing. And also turning that learning, like your poem, into service or into healing or into art.
Yeah.
I think that is it.
Well, I mean, and when I went to a cult rehab facility when I got out, and it was in Ohio. It was one of these, it doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately. But they were the ones that said, when you've had your self-esteem thrashed, one of the best ways to rebuild it is through the artistic means. So whether it's writing, whether it's through dance, through painting, whatever, when you start to realize that this lens that you hold to express yourself in whatever form you do, and as you start to do that, you recognize there's value occurring before your eyes, so to speak. That helps you recognize that this experience, albeit very painful at times, gave you a perspective that is unique to yourself and actually has value.
That's right.
And I found that to be healing. So I can imagine even going through the process of creating Holy Hell must have been very cathartic, challenging, but
therapeutic.
It was challenging and triggering because I wasn't over it yet.
Right.
And that's what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
And let's talk about
that's
those
my
stuff.
main question.
It was really, it was 5 years, and so then I hadn't really dealt with it. I kind of ran.
Right.
And then I was in a relationship with this guy, not until I started making the movie.
Right.
And I mean, I would talk to him for 2 hours every night, and he still couldn't understand it. He's like, I don't get it. I'm like, oh my God. He's like, this guy's an asshole. I'm like, how could you? I'm like, stop it. I go, you are like really freaking me out.
Right,
I can't even talk about this with you. You're not helping.
Yeah.
I'm going to make a movie and you'll understand it.
Yeah.
Really? So is that one of the impetuses?
It was one of the impetuses.
It?
Like, I can't explain this. I could talk for 2 hours every night and you still can't picture it. I go, I have images. I can make a movie about this and tell you what I'm talking about. Because they didn't have any images to go with it, what I was talking about.
And no reference point.
No reference point. Yeah. So it's really abstract. It's hard for someone to understand it if I tell them what was going on for me. And so, So,
when you started making the movie, you were 5 years out?
Yes. And so I remember going over to Hawaii. So I decided to make the movie. I was at Sundance. Right. I went to Sundance in 2012. And I thought, I went there with my ex-partner was saying, you need to go and just go there and let people know you're a filmmaker, you were in a cult for a long time, and you're back.
You're back.
I go, I'm not going to do that. You got to go. I'm going to do these and show these promos. But I'm like, I love you, but. I go, that's embarrassing. Yeah. So I went to Sundance and kind of did look around, hoping someone would say, oh my God, I'm going to give you $1 million. And you seem very talented.
Here's $1 million.
I want you to make a movie for me. Well, it doesn't, So by the end of Sundance that year, I was like, I have to make my own movie. Yeah. I have to prove myself. No one's going to. So that's when I decided to make the movie. Right. So, and I also had heard that he had started a group again. And so I went back several times, and this is the really hard part.
You went back to Hawaii?
Yeah, alone.
Okay.
With a camera?
Yes, and a tracking device, and
I think I saw some of that footage, yeah.
Oh, I didn't show anyone that. Well, hopefully not.
Well, I saw, there's one little piece online.
Oh, is there with the tracking device?
When you have a hidden camera.
Yes, that is different.
Oh, okay.
I was putting a tracking device under his car.
Oh.
Which is legal because you can buy them.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Yeah. And
Anything
the car
you
wasn't
can
my
buy.
name. The car wasn't my name.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. So, because I just wanted to like not, I didn't want to stalk him, but I just wanted to run into him someplace.
Sure.
And catch him. And I had these I had this whole thing planned out. I had camera glasses.
Right. I know
they were
those.
pretty high definition,
Wow.
like right here, the camera.
Yeah.
I had sunglasses and these kind. I had the whole thing.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Footage is cool.
Yeah.
And so I was there alone though, and I was really going through. I didn't realize how scared I was.
Yeah.
Just getting near him, I was just
His energy.
No, I can
just
imagine.
everything
Yeah.
felt so dark, and I just see them. I was like, and I call my friend. I'm like, it's so dark. I feel. He goes, that's because they're evil. I'm like, they're not. Hold on. I go, slow down.
Yeah.
I'm just talking about dark energy. I'm not evil.
Yeah.
But he's like, he's the devil. I'm like, he's not the devil. So I had to kind of like sort through all of these. Like, he's a man. He's a sick man.
Right.
Yeah.
He's sick.
And he's hurting people.
A wounded, ill person.
Yes.
Yeah.
With delusionary things.
With some really,
With narcissistic
with some really dangerous
personality
coping.
disorder.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's people he's hurting, and I feel responsible. You know, and no one's doing anything about it. And I had a friend who I called who had been really abused in the group, very, very badly, and he was very angry.
Yeah.
And he's Italian. And he talked like this. He went down. Yeah. And I said,
I don't want to piss off those Italians.
No, he could have killed him.
Yeah.
And Will, hold on for a second, because didn't he escalate to physical violence towards the kind of the end?
Slapping maybe someone. Not physical too
Not
much. I mean, he's a small guy, but
He would slap people and just be verbally abusive.
Yeah.
Okay.
He'd slap someone, or he slapped me once.
What?
This one guy, I remember asking him at this point, I was making the movie. I'm like, I want to make a movie and bring Andreas Expose this. He goes, no, a movie's not going to do anything. He goes, when you have a lawsuit, call me. I go, a lawsuit's not going to do anything. I go, have you seen Super Size Me?
Yeah.
I mean, how many lawsuits has McDonald's had
Right,
in
yeah.
20 years, and then nobody knows about it.
Yeah.
Super Size Me comes out, now there's salads and fruit drinks and shit.
Yeah.
Like, it makes a difference.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
And like
The
a
court of
lawsuit would do
public
nothing.
opinion, I call
plus
it.
you can't get anything on him in legality. So the way to expose a narcissist is to literally expose them.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to be seen for what they're doing. You know?
You go after the ego by exposing them.
Yeah.
So we talked about like when is someone ready to tell their story publicly. So
All right. So at 5 years, you started making the movie, but you feel like you're still in the middle of it.
At 5 years, I felt like I got everything out of my system and that now I was like ready to like, where am I going? What am I going to do? What's important to me? And that's when I, Sundance and filming and just,
right.
what do I want to, what stories? And I had made a long list of everything I could do. And I had like 2 pages of like, I could do work on a web series. I could write this. I could finish these shorts. Nowhere on there was a documentary. I'd never been planning on a documentary until I went to Sundance. And they had a documentary grant. And I thought, I could make a documentary. I mean, I literally hadn't been in my consciousness. So it wasn't premeditated. It was like, that's why I don't even make lists anymore.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I'm probably not even thinking of consciously what I'm going to do next.
Right.
I think I know. So when the film, that became my learning. And it took 4 years. So I was at Sundance in 2012, February, like 2. And I ended up at Sundance with the film 4 years later in 2016. It premiered at Sundance.
Amazing.
And it was like in competition. It showed 7 nights. It was a big deal.
Wow.
I know, and I never saw that coming.
Yeah.
Because I had done a submission to Sundance like 10 days after that. They had 10 days to do a submission. And I ran home and I filmed 5 of my friends and I cut this trailer together. It was great. It was a 10-minute version of Holy Hell. And they didn't accept it, right?
Yeah.
Really?
No. So I thought, well, that's kind of good. I wanted to workshop with people who can help me, who would have my back and make sure I didn't make a complete fool of myself. So I wanted that, but I thought, well, it's probably better that nobody's helping me because I don't want someone to tell me how to make this, right?
Sure.
So I felt that was a blessing. And so then about a year later, I met Geraldine Dreyfus. She was like head of Sundance, and she had seen a 45-minute cut I did. And she's like, oh my God, have you sent this to Sundance? And I was like, I did, but they didn't accept it. She goes, well, how many times did you apply? I go, once. She goes, well, you have to apply 3 times.
Really?
I go, really? I'm like, well, I didn't.
I didn't get the memo.
Nobody told me that. No, sorry, I didn't do that. So when they accepted the film, I was like shocked. I was like, wow. I don't think but it's so different. Everything's so different every year.
Different.
So that was amazing. But but that process. So yeah, that is when I learned what happened.
Right.
That's when I talked to people and I went to people.
When you were
and I interviewed
interviewing
a lot of
all
people.
the people.
Right.
I did a lot of pre-interviews, and then I did the final. Then I learned I couldn't have 30 people in my film.
Right.
I was like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Too much?
I'd never done a feature documentary. I was like, no, people can only really follow 6 or 7 characters. I was like, I can't tell the story with that few people because they don't have all the stories.
Yeah.
Right. But we did.
Yeah.
That's why it's...
So looking back on it now, because I look at, I've seen you talk and other things since the movie's come out. So I'd be curious to hear your growth process since doing the film, kind of on that healing recovery path.
I will admit that working on the film was traumatizing, of course, and I would think probably re-traumatizing in a negative way for me.
Right.
I would like to believe that people need to move away from that stuff sometimes, work it out, but move away from it, right?
Yeah.
And I moved into it, which great, but unfortunately it was like 4 years of moving into it again, and that's I wish I didn't have to do that.
It's heavy.
It was heavy.
Yeah.
And I got to really feel it all during that time. And I think that helped me understand it.
Yeah.
And also to speak about it. And to speak for other people.
Right.
Because they also had empathy for their stories, which were different than mine. Right? And the women were just as abused and just as hurt as the men.
Yeah.
And in different ways. And so all of it made sense to me. And when my friends showed up, friends who had never talked to each other, they all came to Sundance. About 30 people showed up. And they said they watched their life on the screen. And they just, it was for the first time they could see what happened.
The big picture.
Because everyone was talking. It was all their friends
dots.
telling. It was like all their friends talking to them. This happened, and they're like, I didn't. They were just like, they saw it every night. It healed them. It helped them. Understanding and transparency helps you heal.
Totally.
Right.
Totally.
It helps you go. I'm not crazy.
Everything.
But if the communication isn't happening,
right,
then there's no opportunity. And so that's what I think. The arts can be such a wonderful conduit for these type of stories because, like you're just saying, like I'm telling my story as well, and it's largely because I want to have the conversations based on my current perspective. Right. But everyone wants to know how I got to this perspective. So I have to kind of unpack that story so that I can get to the conversations I want to have, like we're having right now.
It's interesting because the very last, because when I was making it, I thought, well, the third act's going to be when we get to explain it.
Yeah.
When we get to show them how much we understand and we know what happened. Sorry.
Right.
And it got to the third act, we're like, no, that's really not how it's going to happen.
Yeah.
We just get one line. You get to say what you got, your takeaway. That's it. It's like, no, I was making the whole movie so I could talk about
it. To get to
but
this.
But it took us that long to make it. By the end, it was just really like, we're just going to close. That's why it ended like kind of hard note. Not a hard note, but a melancholy note.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is truthful because it's really hard to reconcile and to get peace from that person.
And it was accurate for where you all were at that time.
For where you guys were.
Because I certainly...
It's authentic.
I certainly saw as when I went to that screening and I saw all of you, I could see you guys were just on the early... As I was.
Early stages.
Very
broken
sad.
And
very,
sad.
Yeah, very, very, very damaged. But that's where we all start. And so I could just see like, the best is still yet to come, but you don't know that at that time and place, and you only get there over time.
Yeah, it was hard.
Yeah,
but it was great to do it, and we had done so much. Like we thought we were serving in our group so much.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is service. If I ever did service, remember I told you, he said,
that was it.
I go, this is my service then, because maybe I never did it for you, but to me, this is important.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, because I look at even like what we're doing and the work that I've done in this community. Now I feel like I'm actually doing what I signed up for initially when I got involved with it.
Right.
Like
took the long road.
It's like so I don't tell people to take the courses I took at the School of Hard Knocks, but it gave me the perspective and the information so that I can talk about things in the way that I always wished I could talk about that I couldn't have if I hadn't gone through it. So that's where that method of the madness type of thing.
So much awareness. And so much, you can see things in other groups and knowledge everywhere.
We talk about it all the time. We live in a very cultish society right now.
It's very much.
There's this idea of people end up in absolutes and black and white, binary, all or nothing thinking, and that's just so dangerous.
And we still have the paradigm of this pyramid where everyone at the bottom really doesn't know
what's going on.
We don't care.
What's right.
A lot of us don't care.
Yeah.
Like we just
or
trust
don't even want to know.
We don't want to know.
Ignorance is bliss.
But yeah. So there's we can't have that kind of. That's not freedom. That's not awareness.
It's not. And that's why these type of conversations, I believe, are important and useful. And I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. And
well, there is one thing I want to add about how to get out of something like this. It's kind of the same way you got into it, which is slowly. You back out. Like, maybe you might have gone to something and you loved it and you went to a meeting, and then also you went to the meeting a couple times, and then I went to the movies with them, and then I went to an outing, and then I went to class. Okay, well, you start committing, and you start like, well, this is all making me feel good.
Right.
I don't want to give it up because it makes me feel good. So the way to get out of that addiction, basically, addicted to love, whatever it is to just eliminate one thing at a time, is just slowly back away. Don't go to that one function.
Yeah.
Don't do that thing. See how you feel. Just back up a little bit. And go. You can't run. You can't
learn to start saying no.
Learn to say no.
No.
Yeah, and just try to back out.
Yeah.
And then pretty soon you'll be strong.
Yeah, and I also love that you were motivated by love. You were in a relationship where you were like, I can't continue to do this and be in this relationship I'm in. And I thought that's a beautiful part of the story, how love can be such a catalyst in this way.
And you asked me earlier, what was my responsibility in it, right? Because I was in the inner circle, serving him, letting, basically, what do you call it, enabling.
Yeah.
We all were enabling him. I mean,
and
we can talk politically.
I'm
look how
I'm
people
sure
enable.
On some level recruiting, probably. I mean,
yes, I stopped. I was really, when I was inspired, I was really recruiting, because I was like, if someone came to me at the gym, they're like, "Who are you?" I was like, "Oh, you're just in love with God. you got to meditate." And so I would take them to a meeting and just bypass the whole thing.
Right.
You're really looking for this. Sit down.
Yeah.
It was just silly. But I just stopped doing that once I realized I don't want to bring anyone to this.
Yeah.
But we were going to say something else besides that. You asked me love. He said.
Well, no, I was just saying it's so interesting to find, like you were saying, the way you find your way out.
Is to back out of it.
And you back out of it slowly. And I was also adding to that I think the fact that love was a major motivating factor is a beautiful part to that story. I know in my group, I had a girlfriend at the time, and it was not allowed. And I finally divulged that, and they forced me to break up with her. And that devastating treatment of her was one of the things that really ate at me and led to me actually getting out. And when I finally figured it out, which was over 2 years later, she was one of the first people I called to say, "Hey, by the way, when all that was going down,
sorry how you got treated.
Yeah, this is what's really was really going on."
Yeah,
and which was a very hard conversation to have.
It helps them though, because she's been losing sleep over it for 4 years.
Well, no, she basically went to a therapist who said, "Well, clearly he's a pathological liar."
Okay,
and that's where she had gotten to. So when I come back and say, "Oh no, by the way, I was in a cult," she's like, "No way, I can't believe." It was hard for her to. I'm like, "No, this is what's really happening." So these exits are fascinating, but such an opportunity for growth to learn not only about ourselves, but how our others around us. I mean, I think another part of the story is always like your family and friends, that ripple effect of, you don't go through this in a vacuum. Everyone who cares about you watches you go through this and gets wounded in their own way.
That's right.
And there's a lot of healing that needs to take place, not only in ourselves, but with that whole ripple effect of people around us.
There is an outtake that I didn't put in the movie. It's on the DVDs. And I'll send it to you. But it's the 5 years between what happened. And I was lucky my parents embraced me. It was really part of my healing.
Right.
So my mother, and this is why I would encourage anyone who has a kid or something that they can't reach, who's cut them out, don't turn away from them.
Yeah.
Don't alienate them. Love them, and always know that they're there for you when you come out or whatever.
Exactly.
We were lying to her. She didn't know we were in something, but she kind of knew.
Yeah.
But when I finally got out, and she finally found out that we were living 3 miles from her for 10 years.
Wow.
Without acknowledging it. And I was always traveling all over the world, supposedly.
Wow.
It was devastating. My dad was so devastated, he almost couldn't forgive me.
Yeah.
And my mother, when I walked into the house and I just started crying, I grabbed her and she's just like, "Don't cry, don't cry. It's okay." I'd never seen so much compassion from my mother. It was like this other being. And I thought to myself, I felt more love here today than I felt from him. And I thought he was the one that was giving me all this love.
Right.
I feel more love from you right now. You are so concerned about me. You are so worried about me. And what happened to me.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was priceless.
And those are the silver linings of all of this. I mean, it's like the prodigal son returning. It's beautiful.
And they were lovely. And so I got to heal those 5 years. I got to spend as much time as I could. I interviewed them. I did all this stuff. I got back in their lives, and I kind of felt like I really
got to get to know them again. Almost.
Yeah, I got to get to share my life with them again.
Yeah.
And it was lovely because I never had a problem with my family. I mean, I didn't want to spend all my time with them.
Right. Sure. Sure.
Right.
But I love my family.
Yeah.
So we had a great family. So.
Well, on that note of love, that was a good conversation. Well, that was
Yeah.
We did cover the gamut. And
we did.
Healing continues.
It does. And this conversation was healing.
Yeah, and talking with you guys is healing, and knowing you've gone through this, another soul, another two souls who've gone through this.
Yeah.
Well, and isn't it interesting that we all entered our respective groups because we wanted to love and learn how to love and learn how to
expand,
help people,
be a better version of yourself, and help out. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But here we are now, full circle, really doing it.
Yeah.
With those really kind of tools we learned from everything we didn't want. Now we get to use everything we have to help other
Some
people.
Some of the best teachers are the ones that remind you how not to be.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I always say is I learned not what I thought I was going to learn, but I learned so many things of what I'm not going to be.
Yeah.
Really strongly.
Yeah.
Like I learned.
Everything I learned was everything I don't want to be.
I was like, far out.
But it really outlines what you want to be.
That's right.
That
It defines
way.
you.
Yeah,
It's a very strong blueprint.
It's a negative. I was like, well, I didn't see that coming.
Exactly. Exactly.
Fantastic.
Thank you guys so much.
All right. Well,
pleasure.
and thank you again for your beautiful film, which in itself is an act of communion, like our quote, which I'm going to read here to close out. But that film, I mean, it reached so many people and still will and will continue. So I thank you for really going there and digging into that and putting that together for all of us.
I can't wait for the sequel.
Yes.
Well, I felt the one thing I'll say is I made that movie because I felt all of us can understand this stuff. There's not just 5 people in the world who can understand this. We're all a big family here. It's all one big group of people here.
Right.
In this human condition. I think we can all be grown-ups and talk about things and understand them.
Yeah. Well, that film was an act of communion. I think that's a good way to kind of wrap it up for all of us. So on that note, here's our quote of the day. Rarely, if ever, are any of us healed in isolation. Healing is in itself an act of communion. That's by Bell Hooks. So thank you again, Will.
Thank you.
Thanks, Will.
It's been so awesome. And as always, friends who are watching, guard your hearts and your minds. No one else but you should have control of these. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Bye. Thank you, Will.
Thank you.